if you have your Bibles, I want you to open to John 8:32. And we're not going to do a lot of scripture tonight, but this is our starting point. Because we got a lot of ground to cover, and like I said, this is probably going to take several videos to do. And for those of you who are in the Destiny by Design class, if you wonder why I keep looking that way, that's where my Periscope camera is. And, alright. Now, John chapter 8, verse 32. Jesus says this, and we're very familiar with this. We're familiar with it, but we don't know it. Most of us anyway. He says, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Usually we misquote this. We say, the truth shall set you free. But there's a difference between being set free and being made free. Now some people will say, I'm just getting into semantics here, but work with me. To be set free is a change of condition. To be made free is a change of identity. I want you to let that sink in. To be set free is a change of condition or of circumstance. To be made free is a change of identity. That's a big problem for a lot of us. A lot of us are not really free because we don't know the truth. Because we think, well, I know the truth. You know some of the truth. You don't really. Some of us don't even know the truth about ourselves. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. In fact, I'm working on a book where there's a whole chapter called Learn to Trust the Truth. I'm in the final chapter on that book. I'm very excited about that particular book. It's over 200 pages long so far. It's actually about business. It's called The $1 Million Hustle. But anyhow, the longest chapter in the book is called Learn to Trust the Truth. Now, I got that phrase from a man by the name of Jim Rohn, who was a motivational speaker for many years. He died a few years ago. I think he died of cancer or something like that. And I think he was about 79 years old. And he was a great motivational speaker, and he would do this speech on 4 things to be successful, and one of them was learn to trust the truth. And I decided to take that and expound on it. Let's examine this subject. I went a bit further than he went. And he would often, Jim Rohn would say to people, to trust the truth. And there's a lot of reasons for this, some of which we'll deal with directly. But first, what I want to say is that the truth is critical to your success in the kingdom. The truth is absolutely essential. A lot of us act like we don't really need the truth. We ignore certain aspects of the truth. And sometimes you'll see people who appear to be successful in ministry in particular, and there's a whole lot of untruth going on. There's a lot of dishonesty. And they appear to be successful, but in God's eyes they are not. And they're not really doing what God intended for them to do. When I'm talking about being successful in the kingdom, I'm talking about accomplishing your God-given mission. That when you're on your deathbed, you can lie there and say, I can go before the Father without a bit of shame because I know that I've been faithful and I did what He told me to do. How many people can really say that? How many of us can really say, if I were to die, I know I will die doing the will of God? That I will die in the will of God for my life. Most of us can't say that. And the scary thing is, we know we can't say that and we don't do anything about it. Tonight I want to show you how to do something about it. Shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. And you need to know the truth. Later on, later in the New Testament, Peter says, that you'd be established in the present truth. It's not enough to intellectually know the truth. To know the truth is to embrace it, to accept it, to receive it. And if you really receive the truth, you act upon it. Don't tell me you know the truth and you don't act on it. It's like the person who says, well, I'm called to be a prophetic evangelist, and they never prepare a sermon. Well, the person says, well, the Lord called me to a dance ministry. And it's like, you don't even know how to dance. Go take some lessons. Or I'm called to a music ministry. Okay, why aren't you writing music? You can't even play an instrument. Don't even, take some singing lessons. Start working on this thing. You've got to at least get started, but you also have to recognize the truth. If you really believe it, you're going to start doing it, or at least start preparing for it. And so when I say learn to trust the truth, part of what I'm saying, and I'm trying to be nice about it, and this may be going to offend some people, but it's my fancy way of saying, please stop lying. Now, I could give everybody the benefit of the doubt and assume that you've never lied in any situation ever in your life. And we all know that's not true. Uh, for most of us anyway. I know I used to be quite the prolific liar, and I was really good at it. In fact, there were prophets who couldn't tell I was lying because I was that good. Uh, but anyway, and what I'll tell you about lying is high maintenance. Truth is low maintenance. Truth is low maintenance. You don't even have to have a good memory. With lies, you got to have a good memory. Sometimes you got to construct more lies to cover up that lie, and you got this whole complicated web of lies that you've told. In fact, I used to lie so much that on certain things, I forgot what the truth was. I kid you not. I was thinking about something. This is about back in 2000. I think I was on a fast, and I was thinking about something that had happened a few years prior. And I was thinking about what happened, and the Lord said to me, "That's not what happened." I had lied about it so much, I forgot what really happened. I'm talking about pathological liar, my goodness. Like, I had actually forgotten what really happened. Here I was thinking I was going to get some kind of deep revelation on this fast, and all God was showing me was I'd lied so much that I forgot what the truth was. In fact, we were talking about this earlier in a broadcast earlier last week, I guess late last week, about Genesis 26. We all like to talk about how Isaac sowed in the land that year and he received 100-fold, and we think it was about him sowing in the time of famine, when if you read that passage, we don't even know for sure if the famine was still going on by that point, because he was there for a long time. Then some things happened before he sowed in the land. The main thing that happened was that God dealt with his lying ways. God didn't bless him until he stopped lying. Isaac had to learn to trust the truth. Because he's there in the land of Gerar, in the land of the Philistines, telling everybody this is my sister and not my wife, because he was afraid they'd kill him for his woman. Like they wouldn't just kidnap her if he was his sister. But anyhow, and that kind of lie, you got to tell other lies to support that lie. But the king saw him, it says, sporting with his wife. I guess that's King James fancy talk for he was getting fresh with his wife. And then he realized, no, this isn't his sister. And then he sent him away. And he went somewhere else. The blessing of God is contingent very often on being in the right place at the right time and letting God deal with your mess. You got to recognize the truth. Isaac had to learn to trust the truth. The truth was that was his wife, not his sister. And he had to trust the truth that God said, I'm going to bless you. And God can't bless you if you're dead. So why are you scared these people are going to kill you for your woman? If God said you are the progenitor of a nation, you got to at least make some babies before this is over. God, he's not going to let nobody kill you. He still hadn't trusted the truth, not even regarding what God had said to him. Because if he had really believed God, he wouldn't have been lying about his wife. So there was a deeper issue there. And a lot of us, we got similar situations in our lives. We got all kinds of baggage that causes us to behave in certain kinds of ways, to perceive the world in certain kinds of ways, to relate to people in certain kinds of ways, and it's all tied to something we believe that isn't really true. Some of us, we have firmly held beliefs and we think it's the truth, because we've believed it for so long, and there seems to be evidence. So, it's like a pretty girl that thinks she's ugly because when she was growing up, she was a little awkward looking, had an awkward stage around 12 years old, and people made fun of her, or her family didn't like her, and they always told her she was ugly, so she believes she's ugly. I knew a girl like that. She thought she was ugly. She was beautiful. She was gorgeous. But she thought she was ugly. So to her, it was the truth. But it wasn't true. It was a firmly held belief. But not true. So I'm not really telling liars to stop lying, because liars lie. That's what they do. That's why we call them liars in the first place. And I will touch on deception in general. But what I'm really trying to deal with here is the little ways in which deceit, especially self-deception, can creep into what we do and how we do it, and why plain spoken truth and having truth in yourself without any ulterior motives is far more effective in the pursuit of your destiny in the long term. Because a lot of us have taken shortcuts. And as I like to say, what you compromise to get, you're going to compromise to keep. A lot of people go through all kinds of compromises. They put up with all kinds of nonsense. I know preachers who will not call out false teachers. They will not call out falsehood in ministry. They'll preach for 3 hours about false prophets on social media, but they won't talk about the false prophet that's got a mega church because they want to preach there. And they don't want to make anybody angry that likes that false prophet. They don't dare. They don't trust the truth. Don't tell me they do. Now, around the time that I was actually writing all this stuff, I had a chance a couple of years ago to, when I first started writing on this, I had a chance to meet Darryl Sittler. Now, if you follow hockey, which I don't, but I found out who he was when I went to this event. Darryl Sittler is one of the greatest hockey players of all time. I think he once scored 10 points in one game, which is ridiculous. Or between points he scored and assists, it was 10 points in one game, which is insane for hockey. And so I got to meet him, and we had a chance to, it was like a Q&A session, so I decided to ask a question. And, I wanted to ask him a question about his success in life. And my question for him was, what would you say is the most important communication skill? His answer surprised me. He said honesty. Now, most of us would not think of honesty as a communication skill. But he did. We usually think of it as a character trait. But Darryl Sittler went on to tell a story about his experience in the NHL and someone who was in the management of the team that he played for years and years, who had lied to him about something, and how it destroyed the trust between them. And their relationship was never the same again. He forgave the guy, but he couldn't trust him anymore. Because the lie the man had told, they ended up trading him to another team when they told him they weren't going to. And this apparently hurt him deeply. I could tell that even to this day, he's still hurt over it. Because to him it was such a betrayal. It completely destroyed the trust that was between them. And it happened because the person who lied to him, lacked the confidence to endure possible confrontation. And so he poisoned a valuable relationship because he wanted to avoid a confrontation. And so one of the things I got to tell you about achieving your destiny, you've got to be willing to not just receive the truth, but tell the truth. A lot of us ruin relationships because and I'm not just talking about like romantic relationships, but business relationships, ministry relationships, because we're not willing to say, look, I got a problem with this. I could see on his face that experience had really hurt him. And that had happened like 30 years ago. Imagine that. One lie hurt him that bad. Now, most of us have probably had some situations in which we were afraid to tell the truth. And while we didn't mean any harm in our duplicity, because sometimes we do harm without meaning harm. We're not trying to be a scumbag, but we end up leaving something out because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. And don't get me wrong, you do have to speak the truth in love. But in the end, we end up causing more hurt with our duplicity than what the truth might have done. And so truthfulness and having the habit of truthfulness is essential to good relationships in general, and particularly any relationship you have within the kingdom. Now, one of the things I learned dealing with business leaders, for example, is they tend to have a keenly developed ability to detect deceit and duplicity. They got a strong BS meter. They know when people are lying to them. I've never met somebody who is, let's say, worth like 50 million who couldn't pick up on deceit. Usually they can, because they've been lied to. Well, it's more than good ethics. We're going beyond that, but bear with me. It's not just about ethics, because you can be ethical and still be a scumbag. I'm serious. People, some folks, they can suss out a lie because some of them are liars themselves, or they've been lied to. They got to where they got. Sometimes through dishonesty, and sometimes they had to get past dishonest people to become successful in whatever it is they're doing. And some of us, we try to play deception games in ministry, and we don't know people see right through us. Most of us are not anywhere near as mysterious as we think we are. And I guarantee you, if you're on this broadcast, you're not as mysterious as you think you are. No, you're not. You'd be surprised how many people see right through you and you don't even know it. They might not say anything, but they see it. Now, some people may have considerable skill in hoodwinking others, and some people succeed in deceiving. But remember, we're talking about trusting the truth, because we're talking about your kingdom identity and your kingdom destiny. You might fool everybody else. You're never going to fool God. And here's the thing with dishonesty is eventually you develop a reputation. And trust is something that's really hard to get back once you lose it. Now, I don't believe in gaining trust. I believe in earning it. I don't try to gain people's trust. I strive to deserve it. So can you build a destiny without integrity? I would say no, not a kingdom destiny. You can build success without integrity. Or at least material success, but you're not going to build your kingdom destiny. You might build a destiny where you might seem successful in ministry, and then you end up hearing those most terrifying words in the world, which are, "Depart from me, you that work iniquity, for I never knew you." There's a proverb that says, "Buy the truth and never sell it." And I want to discuss why truth is valuable, because and it says this in the book of Proverbs: "Buy the truth and never sell it." I got to agree with that statement. Whether it's in business dealings, whether it's in just in life in general, most of us use the truth. And here's one of the reasons why truth is so important. You will always use either the truth or what you think is the truth as the foundation for all your decision-making ability. Truth is the foundation of all your decisions, or at least what you think is the truth. Because most of us, we won't say, "Well, there's a car coming, so I'll cross the street." No, we see a car coming, we wait to cross the street because we don't want to get run over. Nobody says, "Well, I see a car coming, but I'm going to ignore this." At least not anybody who doesn't want to die. If you get my meaning, we make our decisions based on things that we believe to be true. And there's some reasons for this. We use truth to establish principles, to interpret information and events. We use it to guide our decision making. We use it to protect ourselves and others from deception and manipulation. Those are the basic uses of truth in everyday life. No matter what you're doing, you're going to use, I'm going to say that again, you're going to use truth to either truth or what you think is truth to establish principles, interpret information and events, guide your decision making, and protect yourself and others from deception and manipulation. Everybody does that with truth or with what they think is the truth. And something you got to understand is a reputation for truthfulness will create trust. And trust is probably by far the most precious currency you can possess, both in business and everyday life, and even in the work of the ministry. A lot of people, let's say in sales, a lot of I wouldn't call it self-determination, because this isn't about self-determination. Salespeople are usually pretty fond of saying that people will buy from you because they like you, and that's kind of true. That's very true. But the greater truth is that people are more likely to buy from you when they feel that they know you, like you, and trust you. Because I know people that I know them, and I like them, but I don't trust them. Like if I go on vacation, there's somebody I like a lot that I would never allow to house sit for me, because they probably burn my house down. Come back and there's a smoking ruin. Oh man, well, I'm glad Connie's cats. So I know him, I like him, but I don't really trust him too much. I trust him on certain things, just with certain types of responsibilities. I don't know if I trust him entirely. And and just like you might like your 5-year-old, but you're not throwing them the keys to your car. You better not. You're a horrible parent if you do. Uh, they can't even see over the steering wheel. My goodness, unless it's like Andre the Giant type of 5-year-old. But anyhow, uh, and similarly, in your destiny, sooner or later you're going to have to persuade somebody. You may not think you're in sales. Everybody's in sales. You're going to go through a lot of sales pitches in your life. If you're a guy and you're proposing marriage, that's a sales pitch. When you're interviewing for a job, guess what? That's a sales pitch. There's so many things in life where you're negotiating or where you're trying to persuade somebody. In fact, if you're an evangelist, you're a salesperson. You're selling the gospel, not for money, but you are presenting something that you want to persuade somebody toward. And people are more likely to receive what you're presenting if they trust you. There's a lot of people in my network of contacts who will pretty much accept anything I say. I could tell them anything as long as it's not something stupid, and they'll believe me without question because they trust me. I don't have to explain myself though. I remember years ago there was a man a young guy who was part of our group. We had a group of men that used to get together 6 days a week to pray together at the church. It was a 5 a.m. prayer group. We'd get there 6 days a week and pray together. And there was one guy who he was sometimes part of the church, and a lot of times he'd disappear for months. But what the pastor I don't think knew was he used to come to the prayer meetings even when he didn't come to church. And this guy wouldn't listen to anybody. He questioned everything, and they asked him this. They noticed one morning I told him to do something, he just went and did it. And they said, they asked him, they said, "Brother so-and-so, I noticed that when anybody tells you to do something, you have a whole lot of questions for them, and you gotta have reasons and explanations and all that before you'll listen to them. But Brother Sam tells you to do something, you just go ahead and do it. Why is that?" And he wasn't asking that out of curiosity. They were very jealous. They envied, they felt like he should just obey them, and that the fact that he listened to me was bothering them. And then he gave them his answer, which is one of the saddest things I've ever heard. He said to them, "I was listening to Brother Sam because I know that Brother Sam loves me." He's in a room full of people that pray together 6 days a week at 5 o'clock in the morning, and there's only one person in the room that he's sure loves him. That's shameful. It's tragic. And I remember having a conversation with the same man who had asked the question, where I said, this guy's problem is not rebellion. His problem is rejection, because his father didn't love him. And he got so much rejection from his father that he does not trust male authority figures. And so he's going to question everything. He'll rebel against you if he feels like you don't care about it. And of course, this guy was a pastor, so he knew everything. He was like, no, his brother so-and-so's problem is rebellion. It's rebellion. No, it's not. His problem is rejection. His problem was a broken heart. His problem was that he didn't receive love at an early age. You show the guy some love, he'll do everything. He don't question your motives. Because he felt safe. And the problem with them was the way they dealt with him was they felt he was a rebel, so they had to crush him. They felt public humiliation was the best way to deal with rebellion. No, it's not. You do that to him, all he sees is his no good father. Regardless of what you think your motives might be. But that's why he wouldn't question what I told him. He would do whatever I told him because he was sure that I cared about him. And then he knew if I told him to do something, it was that I had a pure motive. Now, saying all that, uh, I'm saying all that to say this: trust is always truth and knowledge based. Trust is always based on what we believe to be true. Now, we could be wrong and have trust in the wrong person, but the reason you, and I know this about everybody, anyone you have ever trusted, it was because of what you believed to be true about them. Now, and you might have found out later, much to your horror, that you shouldn't have trusted them, but the reason you trusted them was because you believed there was something, there was reason to trust them, and you thought what you believed about them was true. So trust is always truth and knowledge based. It's another reason why you have to trust the truth. Trust is built on what we believe or perceive to be true, and on what we know or what we think we know. Think of somebody you really trust. I want you to try that route. Think of somebody you trust a great deal, and then think of why you trust them. Now you start thinking why you trust them. Start writing down the reasons why you trust that person, and what you'll find is the reasons why you trust them are things that you believe are true. And if you suddenly learn that everything you thought you knew about them that made them trustworthy was not true, would you still trust them? No, you wouldn't. If you had any sense, you wouldn't, because your knowledge of them has changed. Remember what I said? Trust is always truth and knowledge based. Now, there are three categories of knowledge that will always apply to your dealings with people. Three categories of knowledge. At least the way I like to keep it simple. Maybe there's more categories, but no matter how many categories there are, they will always fit into one or more of these three. And they are ignorance, information, and inspiration. And let me elaborate on that. In ignorance, they don't know you, or they don't know you well enough to make a positive, informed decision concerning you or what you have to offer. Because let me let you in a secret about your destiny. You're going to need people. Nobody succeeds by themselves. Nobody achieves their destiny alone. Nobody. God put Adam in this world all by himself. Guess what? He still gave him a wife, right? He wasn't alone anymore. Jesus, even he didn't achieve his destiny alone. He at the very least, he needed Judas. See what I mean? See what I mean? Nobody succeeds alone. You're going to need other people, and you're going to need them. And the worst state they can be in is in ignorance about you, because then they either don't know you at all, or they don't know you well enough to make a positive decision about what you have to offer. Now, there's always going to be somebody. There may always be people who somehow click with you, and it's easy to make decisions with them or easy to interact with them. But even then, that's not really the knowledge experience that you want most people interacting with you to have. Because it leaves the door, when people are ignorant about you, it leaves the door wide open for distortions about you, about your business dealings, your personal life, your ministry, whatever it is that you're doing. There can be distortions because they just don't know. So you need some clarity. That's why you have to trust the truth, because some of us, we don't trust the truth enough to be open about who and what we are. Some of us, we kind of close ourselves off from the world because we're afraid of, like kind of saying there, too much betrayal. We're afraid of betrayal. We're afraid of this, or we're trying to prevent that. And so we are not, nobody's even aware of us because we've shut ourselves off. And by that, we're actually violating what I call the law of opportunity, or the law of intention and decision. But we'll get into that later in this course. Now, while people may never develop a thorough knowledge of you, it is to your advantage to make it as easy as possible for them to nail down who you are and what you're about. The second type of knowledge state that people can be in and that you can be in about other people is what I call the information stage, where you have some information. You may have some or even many facts about somebody. Some people will call this brand awareness if you're talking about business. While it's good to be known, it isn't enough. Let's face it. If information changed lives, Google would have already solved the world's problems. Information doesn't change lives. So it's not enough to have information. It's not enough to just be known. You have to be known to the right people. And you've got to trust the truth of who you are. Now I'm getting ahead of myself. So that the right people know you. So that the right people find you. Don't worry about everybody liking you. That don't matter. Everybody don't gotta like you. The right people need to like you. And let me let you in on a secret. The right people will like you. The right people will love you. And there may not be many of them, but that doesn't matter. If they're the right people, they're the right people. Because like I said, nobody succeeds alone. Nobody fulfills their destiny all by themselves. Or at least I would imagine that happens very rarely. So God will bring people into your life. God will cause you to be in other people's lives. I'm not saying you got to be a social butterfly. I'm sure not. Then the third knowledge state is inspiration. Some call this brand advocacy. You know how some people will, you see their car and they got that little Apple logo because they put the sticker on their car because they're too dumb to realize that not only did they pay Apple $3,000 for a laptop, they're advertising for Apple for free. That's brand advocacy. People just love Apple. You know, I'm kind of a brand advocate for BMW to some extent. I used to say that thing they say, what they call it the ultimate driving machine. It's not just a marketing slogan, it's the truth. BMWs are a lot of fun to drive. In fact, the BMW X5 has the lowest center of gravity of any SUV on the market. Its center of gravity is only 2 inches higher than that of the BMW 500 series, which is just a sedan. And because the center of gravity is so low and the car is so well balanced, you can take turns in that car at speeds that'll flip over a Ferrari. Like I said, I'm a bit of a brand advocate for BMW, at least on their performance. On maintenance, no. If you got plenty of money for maintenance, buy a BMW. If you don't, stay away. They're very high maintenance. Things break on a BMW. They don't break on any other car. But they are fun to drive. Anyway, I'm saying all that. Well, the X5 actually has the aerodynamics of a brick, but it's the car is really well balanced. Like you could cut the car in half, and the two halves will weigh the same. I think the front half is like 50 pounds heavier than the back half is 50 pounds heavier than the front half. They were so obsessed with balance that the battery is actually under the spare tire, dead center in the back, because they're so obsessed with making this car perfectly balanced. Makes a handle really nice. But anyhow, all that I'm saying is you will need some brand advocates, so to speak. You will need some people to stick up for you. You're going to need somebody that's going to help you along in your destiny. That's just how it is. Nobody gets away from that. Not that I know of. My goodness, even Job had his no good friends telling him off for like 38 chapters. And that pushed the story along to the point where God intervened, etc., etc. So you need some brand advocates. You're going to need some people who are going to have your back spiritually. Like I like to say, it's the weapons of our warfare. It's not the weapons of your warfare, my warfare. It's our warfare. We were never intended to fight alone. Some of us, we got all these epic struggles and where we struggle with spiritual warfare because we're fighting alone, and you're never meant to fight alone. That is not the kingdom. So you do need some advocates. Because when people become advocates, when people are inspired by you, uh, they don't just know about you, but they stick up for you. They pray for you. They might help you in your call. And here's the problem: is we don't do enough of this. One of the truths that you got to recognize is you need to be somebody else's advocate. You're looking for somebody to bless you. When was the last time you blessed somebody else? When was the last time you helped somebody achieve some part of their destiny? Most of us are not. Yeah, and it comes down to love. The problem is we don't love each other. We talk about love, but on almost everything, we have an every man for himself kind of attitude, and then we wonder why none of us is getting anywhere. It's easier to inspire people also when you've taken a genuine interest in their well-being and their success. Now, the extent of what we know or what we think we know will determine what we believe. Your beliefs are always based on your knowledge, or lack thereof. Belief is ultimately the source of inspiration. I don't like to use the term motivation, because motivation is only temporary, and it requires ongoing maintenance. I'm not saying motivation is bad, but motivation isn't enough. I like to say that motivation can change what you do, but inspiration can change who you are. If you think inspiration is not important, remember the word says what? All Scripture is inspired by God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished for every good work. It's the whole reason why God inspired the writing of the Word. It doesn't say all the Scripture is motivated. It says it is inspired. Yeah, that means, well, to inspire means to breathe into. I don't like it when people say God breathed, because that kind of clutters the meaning. Inspired is actually a better word, because the idea being conveyed is that the authors of Scripture were moved by God to write what they wrote. See, inspiration is transformational. Without the inspiration of God, those just would have been books. Without the inspiration of God, Paul would have been writing something else. Paul would have still been persecuting the church. Isaiah, he would have just been another politician. Daniel, probably the same thing, just a politician. Moses, Moses would have just been a murderer. Or, to some people, a vigilante and a fugitive. Do you see what I'm getting at? Now, all that having been said, I want to touch on at least a couple of other things tonight. Let's see. But you've got to be able to trust the truth. And let me see. I'm looking for an example here in my notes. I knew a guy who was a salesman. This is not a Q&A, so I'm not asking. I'm recording this, so the more I explained this earlier, you probably weren't here. I'm recording this for a class that I teach, and so I can't answer questions. Anyhow, there was a man I knew, worked with him. We were both salespeople for the same company, and he was very slick, and he sounded great on the phone, but he was a liar. And he would, oh goodness, he was a smooth talker. And what he would do was he would knowingly distort the truth. He didn't trust the truth. It wasn't enough for him to give people the truth. He'd want to lie to them to impress them, to get them to buy what he was selling. And the problem with that is that a lot of times they end up spending a whole lot of time dealing with the consequences of their duplicity. So he would ring up more sales than me, but most of his sales would never close. So his closing percentage was lower, so he'd get a lot less commissions than I did. I made more money than him. Even though I had fewer sales, my sales stuck because they were real. So what he would do when he was talking to people on the phone, he would tell them and he was going to fly down to their city in his private jet to close the deal with them the following week. And of course they were impressed, you got a private jet, etc., etc. And so he was a smooth talker and they would believe him, but he wasn't the one that was going to go close the deal. There were sales managers that went to do that. So they'd make the appointment, but then somebody else would show up. And then they'd find out there's no private jet, there's no this, there's no that. And they would be so offended by the deception involved that they wouldn't close the deal. And so there was no sale. And so it may not surprise you, most of his deals never closed. And he lost a lot of deals on the initial contact because a lot of times people who would have been receptive to him simply didn't believe him. You're a guy with a private jet and you're calling me, some small business owner, please. A lot of people won't fall for that. Some people did, but a lot of people didn't. Now, some of you think, well, I don't operate in that kind of flagrant deception. Maybe you don't. But there's a lot of other ways that deceit enters into our lives. There are a lot of ways deceit enters into the equation, particularly in the form of self-deception. Sometimes we believe things about ourselves that are wrong, or we just believe things that are incorrect, and we persuade ourselves that they are true. And sometimes even otherwise very secure, powerful people fall prey to this simply because of how our experiences and our expectations have conditioned us to expect rejection, for example. And that expectancy has a tendency to creep its way into our voice and even into our choice of words, even how we speak. For example, when I worked in sales, a lot of people would try to trick their way past what they call a gatekeeper. Like you're trying to talk to the CEO of a company. Well, you call, even if you have his direct line, it's still going to reroute to his secretary first. You're going to get his executive assistant, and her job is to be the gatekeeper. She don't let everybody talk to him, or whoever the assistant might be. Usually it's a woman, and they're not going to let you talk to him. And so some people would lie to get past the gatekeeper. I actually wrote a book years ago called The Hot Cold Call, and there's a chapter how to make the gatekeeper your friend. And I was really good at getting past gatekeepers, and I didn't lie to them. They would try to trick their way past or disguise their intentions at the outset of the call to get past that person and speak to their target. But then when they take the call, they think the call's about something else, and now you're going to change the subject and try to sell them something, and now they're mad at you. Because here's what they're going to be thinking: if you lied to me just to get my attention, what are you going to do to get my money? And this applies in the kingdom. So many of us, we may not outright lie, but we disguise our intentions. We disguise our real motives. Sometimes even when our motive isn't bad, because we're so scared of rejection, or we think here, let me let you in on a secret. Any door that you got to lie to get through is not a door that God has for you. Any door that you got to hide something to get through is not a door that God has for you. Any door that you have to compromise anything for is not a door God wants you walking through. Now, so what I want to tell you, one of the things you got to do in trusting the truth is never disguise your intentions on any level. When you're engaging in any kingdom relationship, or even in a business relationship, anything that you're doing in the interest of your destiny, don't you dare disguise your intention. Because pretending that your reason for doing something is something other than your true purpose, it's never a good idea, because one, you're engaging in deception. What does the Bible say about deceit? Nothing good. The Bible says, cursed be the deceiver. So the minute you start hiding your intention, you've become a deceiver, and the Bible says you're cursed. I hate to be the one to tell you this, but that's the opposite of blessed. How are you going to achieve your destiny cursed? Hey there, TG Word Ministry. Good to see you. God bless you. And here's the thing: when you disguise your intention and you get caught, and trust me, you will get caught. Most of you anyway. Very few people are that slick and that smooth. That's why I never tried to be slick and smooth as a salesperson, because I just wasn't slick and smooth. So I wasn't even going to try. Some people can. Very few people can. Most of us are just not that mysterious. And once you destroy your credibility like that, it's really hard to rebuild credibility. And like I said, nobody succeeds alone. You're going to need somebody. You're going to need somebody's help to do what God gave you to do. Everybody does. Think I'm lying? Paul still needed Ananias to lay hands on him. And like I said, there's people who are smooth and can pull stuff like that off, but in the kingdom, you're never going to be smooth on God. And most of us, our attempts at duplicity and evasiveness are transparent. You know, one of my favorite movies is Casino Royale. It's a James Bond movie. It was the first one that had Daniel Craig as James Bond. And there's a scene where he says to one of the other main characters, Vesper, this woman who was an accountant working for the government, who was kind of sent to watch him and to watch over the money. They're talking about poker, and he says, well then, you know that in poker, you never play your hand. You play the man in front of you. And that's what you do in poker. You play the man in front of you. You're not really playing your hand, you're playing them. And this would not be possible if people were completely inscrutable. Most people are transparent, including you, including me to some extent. Most of us are rather transparent. Why do you think professional poker players usually wear a visor to shadow their eyes so people can't see the pupils? Because when you're excited, you can't help it. Your pupils will dilate. Same thing when somebody's lying. That's the real reason people used to look each other in the eye. They say, look me in the eye and tell me that. And people think it's to see if the person's going to look away. No, that's part of it. But the real deal is the dilation of the eyes. Because that's something controlled by your nervous system. You can't stop it from happening. Anyhow, we'll talk about lying probably in another lesson. Because like I said, this whole thing on learning to trust the truth, it's going to take a few sessions to get through it all. But we're all creatures of habit. And habits create patterns. And patterns are discernible. People can see patterns. Patterns tell people more about us than we might suspect. You know, it's like people who like to save, you know, if I had $1 million, I would do this, do that. They tell you all the wonderful things they do, and they're usually lying or just fooling themselves. You know, it's like J.P. Morgan used to say, people always have two reasons for what they do, or usually have two reasons for what they do, the real reason and one that sounds good. And the truth is, you know, people who would say what they would do if they had a lot of money, well, why aren't you doing that stuff now? You can't do it on that scale, but you're not even trying to do it a tiny bit. So I know you're not going to do it when you got money. You say, oh, I'll give to charity. Do you give to charity now? No. Oh, I'm going to support missionaries. Really? You won't even give $20 to a missionary now. Do you see what I'm getting at? We are all creatures of habit. Habits create patterns. And patterns can be observed. And patterns will tell people a lot more about you than anything else. Whether that's, you know, we only got a pair of threes or whether we got a royal flush, so to speak. Like I've said, I've never considered myself to be much of a smooth talker or even a great closer when I worked in sales. But what I'm going to share with you, if you're a salesperson, is really going to help you. And if you're a preacher, it's going to help you even more. When I worked in sales, I was just about always either the top salesperson or one of the top salespeople, no matter what it was we were selling. And part of it was, I would say, my straightforwardness and transparency. Because my tendency to be straightforward and transparent builds trust very quickly. Anybody I'm on the phone with knows they know. So is this a sales call? Yes, it is. But I'm not gonna put any pressure on you. I've got something. I'm only calling you because I think what I have to offer is of great value and it's going to save you a lot of money. Or I'd say it some other way, depending on what I was selling. But I'd give them the truth, and usually I try to make it appealing. Now, more often what I do is I call at 6 o'clock in the morning and leave a voicemail and make it really intriguing so they call me back. Because then I'm not, and the reason why I do that, a little tip for you salespeople out there, you want to get people to call you, voicemail is your friend. Don't be scared of voicemail. Leave a message. Make it intriguing. Make it mysterious. Get it to arouse their curiosity. Because here's the thing, when somebody's listening to the voicemail, you have their attention. At that point, you're not an interruption in their day. They're sitting there with a pad, taking notes on their voicemail so they can make calls back. You have their 100% attention when you've left a voicemail. And if it's intriguing, they're going to call you back. And now, when they call you back, they have time to talk to you. They called you. You're not interrupting. See what I'm getting at? In fact, one of the biggest clients I ever had was off of voicemail. It was a 40-second voicemail. Biggest deal I ever put together. Because I made it intriguing. Anyway, this isn't really about sales, but if you're in sales, that's going to help you. Voicemail's your friend. And here's the thing, that straightforwardness will lead to more closing. A lot of people are better closers than me, but I got more chances to close. Because they didn't get to even tell the people what their idea was. If you only get to pitch 10 people out of 100, well, I get to pitch 30, guess who's going to get more sales? I will have 50% more sales than you, even if you're twice as good a closer. Learn to trust the truth. One of the most insidious side effects of being smooth isn't just all the time you're going to waste on damage control and trying to regain your reputation or trying to get people to like you again after you've proven yourself to kind of be a scumbag. But here's the thing, you have the risk of conditioning yourself to believe that you're perfectly capable of dismantling your own credibility and rebuilding it seamlessly. Almost nobody can do that. And this sort of self-deception usually leads to frustration because unless you're the smoothest talker out there, you're going to lose people most of the time. And like I said, you're going to need people. No matter what your destiny is, you're going to need people. So you're going to need somebody's help. And so also while you're focusing on being smooth or polishing the appearance of what you are, you're failing to focus your attention on becoming more valuable. See, a lot of us, we're trying to develop an image, and I knew somebody. I don't want to dog this guy out, but this is what he used to say. Everything he would say was always about the look. Oh, we've got the look. I got the look. You know, he was always concerned with having the look of a certain type of preacher that he wanted to be. And what a surprise! He never. He became an insurance salesman, and he did pretty well in that, but he never achieved his kingdom destiny. And I don't think he ever will. Because he was so concerned with image that he wasn't developing the substance that he needed. Now, some of you may say, well, I'm not in sales. Or I'm not a preacher, or whatever. Well, we're all involved in the ministry of reconciliation. And to some extent, we're all in sales. No matter what your occupation might be, no matter what your destiny is, there's always going to be times where you're going to have to persuade somebody. You're going to have to persuade somebody to think a certain kind of way. You might have to persuade somebody to take a certain particular action, to listen to an idea that you have. You might have to persuade somebody just to be your friend or whatever. Now, these things where we kind of mess up with the truth doesn't always happen because we're trying to manipulate people or deceive them. Sometimes they happen because we really haven't embraced certain truths. And there's certain truths that you need to embrace in order to walk into your destiny and to steward it appropriately. One of them is the truth of who you are. For a lot of us, disguising our intentions is really an expression of insecurity. It is absolutely essential to develop your confidence, particularly your confidence in God. For some of us, we're disguising our intentions or pretending to be something we're not because we don't really trust God. Remember what I said earlier about Isaac lying about his wife. Why? Because if he had really believed what he was told, that he was going to be the progenitor of this great nation, he wouldn't need to lie, because then he'd understand that until I produce an heir, I'm not leaving this earth. Just like I said to my wife years ago about certain dangerous situations that I would be in. I said, I'm not dying until it's time for me to go. I got stuff to do, and until I accomplish my mission, I don't care if somebody drops a nuclear bomb on me, I'll survive. Because I haven't done what God sent me to do yet. Not that I'd get myself into a stupid situation, but there really isn't a whole lot that I'm afraid of. Because I know I at least got to live long enough to complete my mission. And so a lot of people, one of the things that we do, we don't embrace the truth of who we are. We don't even know who we are, most of us. Some of us will try to adapt our personality to what we think it needs to be like to get the sale, or to get a leader like us to let us preach in their church. We had a lot of social chameleons that way, and you see it a lot in relationships too with women. There's a thing they call the manufactured soulmate. A lot of women, when they're looking for a man, or when they want to get a relationship, or they're trying to get married, they will pretend to have the same values as the man that they're seeing, because you want him to like you, and so you'll pretend you like what he likes. He likes playing games on the internet, or he likes, and you'll pretend you don't mind it, or you like it. He might like hunting. You pretend you like hunting. You hate hunting. You don't want it. You love animals, and you think they're cute. Don't want to kill them, but you'll pretend, and then you end up marrying the guy, and it's living hell for 10 years, and then you get divorced because you never really had the same values to begin with. Don't do that. Don't disguise your intentions. Don't disguise your values. Give you a little bit of premarital advice. Make sure you have the same values. Not the same interests, the same values. Those are two different things. Often related, but different things. But we do this all the time, not just in personal relationships, romantic relationships. We do this in ministry. We often pretend to be something we're not. Stop trying to adjust your personality to what you think people are going to like. It's like I said on a recent broadcast, I said to the audience, I really don't care what you think of me. I don't even care if you like me, because you probably don't anyway. And here's the thing you got to understand. So long as you are not embracing the truth of who you are, you will always end up disguising your intentions or disguising your personality, you're putting on some kind of air, putting on some kind of persona or facade to please people. When you do that, you are always wasting your time. You got a limited number of days in this world, and you're wasting it pretending to be something you're not. Because you want somebody to like you. Or you're trying to get them to help you with something, and you're thinking, no. What God has for you is for you. Like I said at the beginning of this broadcast, the right people will like you. The right people will love you. The right doors will open. And guess what? If somebody was supposed to open a door for you, or they were supposed to help you, and they didn't, I don't want to be that person on Judgment Day. I would not want to be, like I've said before, I've said this many times, there's certain conversations with God I don't want to have. And I don't ever want to have to be that guy that stands before God on the day of judgment and have to explain why I didn't help somebody when I was supposed to. I would imagine that would be a very uncomfortable conversation. Now, another truth you have to embrace is the truth of what you have to offer. The truth of the calling of God on your life, if you even know it. What is the calling of God on your life? What is your purpose? What is your mission? Why does it matter? You must embrace the truth of that mission. What is the essential truth of your mission? If you don't even know that truth, how do you trust it? You have to be, when I say trust the truth, especially with regard of what you have to offer, what God put in you. The truth of it is that it has value. The truth of my mission, what is the central truth of it? And they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and the profane, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. It's Ezekiel 44:23. That is my mission. I know its value. The right people will receive it. The right people will want it. Everybody else, they don't want it. That's their problem. Another truth you must embrace to achieve your destiny is the truth of your present skill level. The truth of where you're at. A lot of us simply don't want to accept the truth about who we are and what, not only just who we are, but what we can do. Now, I know a certain person who he wants to have a mega church. And I believe he's called to it. I believe God will give it to him, but he's not ready for it yet. I've told him quite a few times, dude, start a Bible study. Don't go trying to get a lease on a building that can seat 6,000 people and you don't even got one member yet. That's not faith, that's presumption. You're not ready. You don't have that leadership capacity yet. You might be able to connive your way into it, but you won't handle it the way God wants you to. There's plenty of people out there with churches with thousands of people, but they're not really doing a lot of them are not doing what God wants them to do. They're not building disciples. They're not maturing. And I think God will give it to them, but he's got to develop the leadership capacity. You've got to ask yourself, what is my present skill level? Where am I in my maturity? Where am I and how I steward this thing that God gave me? How good am I at using this gift he gave me? Most of us won't give ourselves honest answers to those questions. And sometimes to really get at that particular truth, you need to talk to some kind of mentor who is spiritually mature and very discerning, so that they can give you an honest, or even, if necessary, a brutally honest assessment of where you're at right now. Now, some people will give you assessments without you asking them, and sometimes they'll be wrong. I've had that happen quite a bit. That's like I've said to so many people in the last few years. Your opinion of me and God's opinion of me are very different. One of you is wrong. But see, there I trust the truth. I know what God has said to me. I know what God thinks of me. I harbor no illusions as to where I'm at right now or where I need growth. You must embrace the truth of where you are right now. It's not for the purpose of self-condemnation. This isn't to beat yourself up. This is to recognize where you are. It's like if you got lost at sea, you need to get your bearings. Even if you're not lost at sea, if you are navigating, every now and then, you need to make sure that you're still on course. The best sea captains in the world have to make course corrections. Because sometimes you get caught in a storm or a squall. Sometimes the wind changes directions or whatever. It happens. And so you have to correct course. See, on the ocean, on the ocean you have no room for self-deception. You're sailing in the ocean, especially if you're on a sailboat. You cannot afford to be self-deceived. You have to know where you are. Because there is life and death. And as one man said, I can't remember his name, but he said, I think he was the first person to sail around the world non-stop. And, or to try to do it. I think he almost made it. But he said, any man who says he does not fear the sea is a liar. Out on the ocean, you must know where you are. And if you think that's not a valid analogy, remember the Bible says that those that go out to sea in great ships to do business in great waters, these see the works of the Lord and his wonders in the deep. So you must acknowledge the truth of your skill level. Another truth that you have to embrace to go on to your destiny is this: the truth of your confidence. How confident are you right now? You know, and I've said this before in other broadcasts, if you're not sure of yourself, how can you expect other people to be sure of you? A lot of trust is based and built on how safe or how comfortable people feel with you, especially if you're called to your ministry leadership, if you're called to pastor a church, if you're called to oversee other people. Most people are not comfortable relying on someone who isn't confident. And part of this certainty about yourself will come from having a good understanding of where you're at right now. Because if you know where you're at, you can tell where you're going. Another key to confidence is preparation. And how well you prepare for anything is going to determine the quality of your results. Now, let me give you some keys to improving your confidence. When it comes to your kingdom destiny, I'm going to give you some general things, but when it comes to your kingdom destiny, you want to improve your confidence, you need to improve your relationship with God. Now, some people will hear me say things like, how I've said to some people, your opinion of me and God's opinion of me are very different. One of you is wrong. Some people take that as arrogance. No, that's confidence. I know where I stand with God. I know that I know that I know that I know, and there is nothing that anybody on the face of the earth that can say to me that will shake that confidence. Because I know who I believed in. His sheep know his voice, and another they will not follow. Now, having said all that, so you need to build your relationship with God, because like I said, everything comes from your sonship. You're a son first and you're a son after. Assuming, let's say you live to be 200 years old, which is highly unlikely. But let's assume you can live to be 200. What's 200 years in the face of eternity? Nothing. So even if you walk this earth for 200 years as a great apostle, let's say you're the greatest apostle to ever walk the face of the earth, the greatest apostle since Paul, and you happen to live 200 years, guess what? That lasted 200 years, now you got eternity. You're an apostle for 200 years, you're a son forever. Which one of those things do you think is worth more of your time to invest in? Your apostleship or your sonship? Your sonship comes first, and it comes last. And it's in the middle as well. It's all about the sonship. Because apostle's a job, son is an identity. So let me give you some general things that are going to improve your confidence. Recognize your insecurities so that you can begin to defeat them. I used to be rather insecure about my height, because I'm pretty short for a man. The average man is about, depending on who you ask, about 5'9", 5'10". Some countries the average man is 5'11". So I'm quite short for a man. I'm about 5'4" at the most. But I used to be insecure about that. Nowadays, I often forget that I'm short. In fact, I come across probably most people as so confident, people actually think I'm taller than I actually am. In fact, when I was living in Brampton, Ontario, my doctor thought I was taller than I actually was. There was some paperwork that had to be done for the insurance company, and she signed it and everything, and then I took it and I walked out of her office, and then I had to walk back. I said, wait a minute, there's a mistake on here. I said, you listed my height as 5'8". I'm 5'4". And this happens frequently. People usually think I'm 3 or 4 inches taller than I actually am. Because I don't care. Now, do I recognize there's certain walks in life and certain things that being short is kind of a disadvantage? Oh yeah, especially in ministry. But anyhow, and I can't reach the top shelf in my kitchen cabinets. But anyhow, One time I was looking for some cookies, and I was like, "Where are the cookies?" My wife said they're on the top shelf. I said, "I can't reach the top shelf." She said, "You gonna learn today." Hid the cookies from me. Anyway, so there are some disadvantages, but in the end, I don't really care that much. So recognize your insecurities so that you can start to defeat them. Because God did not save you to be insecure. He didn't. Because ultimately, if you're insecure about something, it's going to control you. And it's going to distract you. And it will defeat you. Because anything you're insecure about is going to change how you perceive the world. It's going to alter your perception of truth. And remember what I said? We always make decisions based on what we think is true. Truth guides your decision making. So insecurities will distort your perception of truth, and therefore they will affect your decisions. And your decisions do impact your destiny. Another key to improving your confidence is to be able to admit when you're wrong. You're going to make mistakes. That's pretty much inevitable for most of us. Maybe there's somebody out there who's never made a mistake. I'm certainly not one of them. The key decision makers you're going to have to deal with in your destiny will want to know that you can recognize a mistake, own up for it, and correct it. See, a lot of us, we try to act like we can't ever mess up and all that, and I've had people, try to address me about some of the transparency that I engage in some of my broadcasts. Sometimes when I'm frustrated, I'll say I'm frustrated, and people say, "Oh, you shouldn't do that because it affects public perception, etc., etc." I'm not really concerned with what they think because I can't hide that from God anyway. God knows when I'm in a bad mood. God knows when I'm frustrated. God knows when I'm sick of everybody, which is frequently, but you need to be able to admit when you're wrong. Because here's the thing, there may be key people that God will send into your life to help you achieve your destiny. And this person was supposed to help you, but you couldn't even admit you were wrong about something, and they didn't trust you because of that. And because they didn't trust you, they didn't want to have anything to do with you. Remember I said about trust? It's probably the most precious commodity you can trade in. And it's very hard to get it back once you lose it. Another thing that'll help you build confidence. See, some people may wonder how can admitting when you're wrong build your confidence? Well, because then you don't have anything to hide anymore. You've already admitted you were wrong. Now you don't have to worry about being found out. You don't have to put up a front or facade. Another thing to do to build your confidence is laugh with them, and they can't laugh at you. I'm going to say that again, laugh with them, and they can't laugh at you. Years ago, I had a bit of a growth on my face, and I made it part of my story. Because sometimes I'd run into people where they're kind of jerks, and they point it out because they're trying to make me uncomfortable. Guess what? I made it part of the story. I would joke about getting it removed so I could go back to being a good-looking guy. That would make people laugh. And it made it easy to transition the focus of the conversation back to something that actually mattered. Laugh with them and they can't laugh at you. Another thing that will build your confidence, relax and be genuine. It takes a lot less effort to be yourself. And something you got to recognize, you can't fool God anyway. God saved you, and He knew what He was saving. Think about that. God knew everything about you when He saved you, and He accepted you. You don't need anybody else's acceptance. Like I've said before, and I'll say it again, God plus nothing is everything you need. So relax and be genuine. Be who you are. If you don't know who you are, find out. Another thing that will build your confidence is to acknowledge your doubts but challenge them. You're going to have doubts. People have doubts. That happens. Sometimes we have an inner dialogue that's full of doubt. Make a habit of establishing an inner dialogue that questions the validity of your doubts. Because I'm not going to tell you you're never going to have doubts. You're going to have doubts, but question those doubts. Challenge them. Because if you just deny your doubts, and you're going to live in denial and you're deceiving yourself. I know people who try to act confident and they really aren't, and sooner or later they get exposed. Another thing that'll build your confidence, make sure to look your best. Make the most of what you got as far as your appearance. Not that it's not everything, but it'll help your confidence. Don't be sloppy, put it that way. Another thing that'll help your confidence is to be prepared. Now the Bible talks about the preparation of the gospel of peace. I think preparation is not important. And so how do you prepare? Well, whatever it is God has called you to do, make sure you develop the knowledge for it. Don't be lazy. Become an expert in what God has called you to do. If He's called you to sing, unless He tells you otherwise, take some singing lessons. If He's called you to write music, well, take some lessons, get a coach. Find some way to develop it. And begin to prepare. Because if you really believe that God has called you for this, why wouldn't you prepare? You know, it's like saying, I really believe it's gonna be a rough winter, and it's gonna snow a lot, but I'm not gonna buy any snow tires. That's just crazy. You know, my back tires are more worn than the front, because I had a problem with the brakes where they were seizing up a little bit, and that put a little extra wear on the back tires. Guess what? The front tires are probably good for this winter. The back tires are not. So I'm going to replace those. Because I know this is Canada, and we're going to get snow. So I will prepare. In fact, I've been doing my winter prep around the house, because I believe winter is coming. Like the man said in that show, winter is coming. Over a month ago, I've already bought all my firewood. It's stacked in my woodshed. 4 cords of firewood. It's a lot of wood. It's like 12 or 13,000 pounds of wood. Cut and split and stacked. And I bought it during the heat of July so that it would dry faster. I also bought firewood that was already a year old. So it was already starting to cure. So by the time I get to burning firewood, it's going to be nice and well cured. Be prepared. Now, it's not just in things like that, but also be prepared for dealing with people. Be prepared for people and events to not always meet your expectations. If people surprise you often, you may want to become a better student of human behavior. You know, I like to say that to be disappointed, you have to be surprised. People don't often disappoint me because people rarely surprise me. But you need to be prepared for people to behave in a way that you may not expect all the time. People are going to be people. And if you understand that, that will also make you more confident. Another thing that will build your confidence is to see your mistakes as lessons. The lesson may not be profound. It may not be life-changing in and of itself. But there's always something to be learned in a mistake. You know, during my Wall Street years, I learned the hard way that it is not enough to sell your client on the product. It's not enough. You got to sell them on you. That was one of the mistakes I made. I sold them on the product, but not on me. And so when my boss decided to fire me so that he could keep all the accounts and the commissions, that's what they do on Wall Street. The minute you open a really big account, they fire you, they keep the client, they keep the commission. And since I didn't sell the client on me, guess what? I couldn't take that client with me. The guy next to me got fired the day before me. His client went with him. because the client liked him. In fact, the client's loyalty was, in my case, was to his own interest. In the other guy's case, the client's loyalty was to him. So I hadn't, so that was a mistake I made there. That mistake cost me a few $1,000,000. And that was probably the business lesson that I've most taken to heart: sell the client on you. So see your mistakes as lessons. That will also build your confidence, because if you see your mistake as a lesson and you actually learn from it, your probability of repeating that mistake is probably lower, and you're going to be less afraid of the outcome. Because usually when we're afraid of making a decision because of a mistake we made before, what we're afraid of is that negative outcome. You will have less fear of a negative outcome when you've actually learned from your mistake. Another thing that will build your confidence is to recognize your successes. We're all good at something. We've all succeeded at something. Even the little things we mastered took some kind of level of skill and commitment and effort. You know, when David was on the run from King Saul, went to Abiathar the priest and said, "Do you have any weapons?" And he said, "We have. Well, the only thing we have here is the only weapon we got here is the sword of Goliath." David said, "There's no other like that. Give it to me." So in the middle of this horrible time in his life, when he's on the run, the king wants him dead, he left in such haste he couldn't even bring any weapons with him. And the one weapon he runs across is the sword of the giant he killed. Something that will build your confidence. And I've said this to our students in our program. In your journal, set aside a page, maybe even inside the cover, write down a list of things that God has done in your life, times that God has come through, times that God has answered prayer. So when you're having doubts, when you're having difficulties, when you are in the middle of heavy warfare and you're discouraged, read the list, read it out loud. And then tell yourself, He'll do it again. Another thing that helps build your confidence is to be thankful for what you already have. A lot of insecurities are rooted in a belief that we lack something. I'm not tall enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not handsome enough, I'm not thin enough, whatever. Be thankful for what you actually have. Not the most handsome fellow, but I've got some muscles, I've got a big chest, I look good in a suit. So I at least got that run for me. So be thankful for what you do have. I'm a pretty clever fellow and got a good sense of humor. But I'm told I have a nice smile, supposedly, but I don't know. Anyway, be thankful for what you do have. And work with what you've got. Another thing that will build your confidence is to be positive even when you don't feel like it. Like there's things I've had to do here around the house to get ready for winter that I really didn't want to do because it's labor intensive and it's boring, and it's I could think of a better way to spend my weekend. Like this weekend, I had to get up on a ladder real high and scrape the old paint off the window that's over here. And the same thing on the other side of the house. 5 different windows. I had to scrape the paint off the window sash. Now, one of the window sashes had peeling paint for a couple of years and gotten wet, and there was dry rot, and I had to put in wood filler and use this chemical to get the wood nice and hard again. Because you can, if it's crumbling, you have to rip it out, but it wasn't crumbling yet, so I used the wood hardener so the wood got hard again. That stops it from rotting, and then you put your wood filler where you need to, and then you sand it and paint it. And so I spent my weekend doing that because I had to get done. You think I felt like doing it? No, I didn't feel like doing it, but I got done. And I was positive about it because the end result was the house looks better. And now that I've done that, if I had put it off a couple more years, that wood would have rotted out, and then I would have had to rip it all out, which would have been a much bigger job. Be positive even when you don't feel like it. Get things done even when you don't feel like it. A lot of people who are more successful than you are more successful than you because they decided to do something when they didn't feel like doing it. Because let me tell you something, brother. You're not always going to feel like doing what God sent you to do. There's times I get on Periscope and I'm teaching. I don't feel like teaching. I feel like doing something else. I'd like to go fishing. I'd like to go hunting. I'd like to go on a vacation. I can't do that right now. There's all kinds of other stuff I like to do. In fact, I got a painting over here that's sitting there. I was supposed to finish months ago, but I've been so busy with other stuff. I'd rather do that. So being positive even when you don't feel like it's not just about having a positive attitude, and we'll talk about attitude in the future. But it's also about getting things done. There's a book I highly recommend called Eat the Frog. I've never read it, but I know the principle of it and I live it. And there's a saying that they took from Mark Twain. He said, "Eat a live frog first thing in the morning, nothing worse will happen to you all day." Take that one thing that you really don't want to do and get that done first. The rest of the day will be easy. And when I got a lot of stuff to do around the house, that's generally what I do. I pick the thing I really don't want to do and I do that first. Makes the rest of the day go by fairly easy. In fact, I did something else today that was actually kind of backbreaking work and I didn't even notice it. Because it was such a relief not to be on that ladder 20 feet off the ground. Or 15 feet off the ground or whatever. Because let me tell you, you're up there on a ladder painting, your feet start to hurt. Oh boy. Here's another thing that will build your confidence. Smile at yourself in the mirror. There's something that's called facial feedback theory, where it is believed, and the research seems to confirm it, that if you look at the mirror and smile at yourself, to your brain chemistry, it will register as if someone else smiled at you. And usually when somebody smiles at us, it actually makes us feel a little bit good. It actually releases good hormones in the brain. So if you're feeling down, if you're feeling a little less confident, look in the mirror and smile. In fact, even in phone sales, they tell you smile and dial. Smile while you're talking on the phone, and actually it affects your tone of voice. It affects how what you're saying comes across. But smile at yourself in the mirror. Studies of that particular theory, facial feedback theory, suggest that the expressions on your face cause your brain to register certain emotions. So I dare you to give that a try. I don't want to say, here's another thing that'll build your confidence. I don't want to say fake it till you make it, like a lot of people say, but I'll say faith it till you make it. I'm not suggesting that you engage in duplicity, but start practicing acting like a cooler, more confident, more successful version of yourself. As I've said to some people a few times, take a moment and imagine how you would be when you have achieved everything you believe your destiny to be. Whatever that might be. You've achieved the success you want. You've gotten it all, and you've accomplished everything that you wanted to accomplish. At that point in your life, how wise would you be? How confident would you be? How happy would you be? How would you choose your friends? How would you relate to people? How would you spend your time? Who and what would you allow to waste your time? Imagine that person. And then realize this. That person already exists inside you. You just haven't given yourself permission to be them. And we actually have a very long teaching called Give Yourself Permission that deals with that. If you think that's not biblical, what does the Bible says that God calls those things that be not as though they were? Start behaving. like the person God called you to be. There's nothing stopping you. Another thing that will build your confidence is to remain committed to your principles. This can be tough at times, but as the saying goes, if those who don't stand for something will fall for anything. Now I'm saying all this to say this. Confidence helps to build trust. A lack of confidence can easily turn a situation into a total rejection. Because people are inundated with all kinds of attempts to get their attention or to gain their trust. Because like I said, you're going to need people to accomplish whatever it is God has for you to do. And most of the people that you're going to encounter are being presented with all kinds of opportunities, even within the kingdom. They could be doing something else. They don't have to engage with you. Now, it may be the will of God for them to engage with you, but they may not know that. And they may not get to know that if you approach the situation with a total lack of confidence. So, the least you can do is to stand out from the people who lack confidence. And that is why I've said all that stuff on confidence. Now, that having been said, let's get into another truth you have to embrace to achieve your destiny. And that is the truth of rejection. Not everybody is going to need what you have. And not everybody's going to want what you have. Just because you are needed doesn't necessarily mean you are wanted. That's just how it is. Just because they need you don't mean they're going to want you. And sometimes effective communication can turn the tide there, and sometimes it won't. Sometimes they can even hear from God and they'll still reject you. Believe me, I've been there. God can tell them that they need to be connected to you. Or God can tell them they need to do this, that, or the other thing with or for you, and they still won't do it. And guess what? If they decide to disobey God, that's really none of your business. Because my goodness, if they're willing to disrespect God by disobeying Him, what makes you think they're going to have any regard for you? And there's a saying in sales: some will, some won't. Who cares who's next? I'm not telling you not to care. So don't get bogged down by rejection. You do have to accept it as a reality of life. You're going to experience rejection, particularly, my goodness, especially if you're a prophet or any ministry leader. You're going to experience rejection. It's part of the walk. So don't let it bog you down, but at the same time, don't embrace rejection either. You got to accept it as a truth of life, but don't don't internalize it. Keep a healthy perspective that while a rejection may happen, just make sure it doesn't happen because you failed to establish rapport, because you did something wrong. Now, a lot of us who fear rejection will often use whatever methods we can to get the chance to present whatever it is we have to offer. And I find that problematic. Because like I said, what you compromise to get, you're going to have to compromise to keep. And to use the example of sales, sometimes people use deceptive tactics to get a chance to make their pitch, so to speak. And the problem is that what ends up happening is either the deception is uncovered, or we encounter the inevitable frustration of getting our foot in the wrong proverbial door. You really think God's going to let you get your foot in the right door when you're being deceitful? No. Hey there, TG Word Minister. Welcome back. I've seen people tiptoe around issues in order to avoid a confrontation or fail to take initiative because they fear their ideas will be rejected. And the result is that the relationship doesn't develop to its full potential. And unfulfilled needs within it may attract outside attention. In business, that means you're going to lose your client to somebody who can fulfill their needs better. And other types of relationships, problems can happen. Uh, and conversely, if you embrace rejection too readily, you may tend to rush through the presentation of whatever it is you have to offer. You may not give it the effort it deserves. I know people who they got rejection issues, and when it comes time for them to talk about their vision, they do it kind of lackadaisically. They don't really put their heart into it because they're so sure they're going to be rejected, they don't really bother to try. And especially if we've embraced rejection a lot, when somebody raises an objection to whatever it is we're presenting, whether it's sales or whether it's something we want to do in ministry or whatever it is, we tend to think that a strong objection precludes any possibility of success in whatever that endeavor may be, and that's not true. Because a no doesn't always mean no forever. It doesn't even mean no right now. It means the person has a concern, has an objection. And let me let you in on a secret. There may be people that are assigned by God to help you who will have strong objections to helping you at first. They may need some persuading. They may also be testing you, trying to see if you'll give up. And a lot of people do that. Yeah, the truth is, a lot of people who might reject you now just don't have an urgent enough need for you yet. There are people who reject you now, 3 years from now, they're going to need you urgently, and at that point, they're not going to reject you, they're going to be desperate for you. So understanding the truth of rejection also brings me to my next point. Another kind of very destructive self-deception that leads a lot of good people into wasting their valuable time. Too many of us approach our destiny from a standpoint of trying too hard. And then we end up, we either try too hard or we try too hard with the wrong people. And then we end up casting our pearls before swine. We end up delivering what God put in us to people who are not even qualified to engage with us. I'm not saying that from a standpoint like snobbery or whatever, but some people simply don't deserve what God put in you. They don't. Well, I think Jesus said, cast not your pearls before swine. You know, and I remember years ago when I worked on Wall Street, one of the brokers I worked with, who'd been in the business longer than me, he saw me getting frustrated with trying to, you'd cold call people and try to talk to them a little bit, and you'd make a little card, kind of a dossier on them, and then set up a time to call them again and try to actually sell them the stock. But you're trying to figure out if they're qualified. And he said to me, don't qualify them, disqualify them. Don't worry about whether they're qualified. Try to disqualify them as a client. And it's the same thing in the kingdom. Don't qualify them, disqualify them. Be picky. Make the decision that what God has put in you is valuable enough that it isn't necessarily for everyone. That it's okay for somebody to not want what you have to offer. That if they reject what God put in you, that's their problem. And sometimes a lot of what you have to do is to cut some people loose. Sometimes you have to deny people access to your life and to what God put in you. I've had to say to quite a few people over the last few years, I'm God's prophet, not yours. And a lot of times people don't want to do that. They don't want to cut people loose or cut people off or reduce the total number of contacts they have because they think it's counterintuitive, counterproductive. like especially in sales, they say, well, you're going to cut your sales numbers down by not doing business with troublesome, tiresome, or time-consuming people. After all, you need the sale, right? Wrong. Just like in business, there's low-value clients. In this thing we call our destiny, there are low-value people. I hate to say that, but it's true. There are people who are, it's not that their inherent value is low, but their value within the context of your purpose is low, because sometimes some of them just don't belong in your life. Some of them don't belong in your destiny, and that's okay. They got their own destiny. And I've learned this lesson the hard way from business. I once took on a client on a sliding scale with their promise that they were going to send me referrals. So I was going to charge them less than what I would normally charge them, because they were going to send me a bunch of referrals. That client turned out, they proved to be a lot more work. They were a pain in the behind. The project that I worked on for them consumed a lot more of my time than originally anticipated. They weren't teachable at all. They were hard to deal with. Yeah, stretching yourself thin does beat you up, and it impacts on the value and what you have to offer. You're right. In the end, they just weren't worth the trouble that I'd gone to. It really wasn't worth it. And you may not be shocked to know this, but those referrals never happened either. So I learned my lesson. I decided not to deal with people who were unwilling or unable to pay my full price. Those who are willing to pay more for your services are more likely to respect your time, effort, and expertise. One of the things they teach in certain kinds of marketing is to charge more for your services, because the people who pay more, who are willing to pay you more, will actually listen to you. And I found that in consulting and coaching. The more I charge people, the more they listen to me, because it's costing them. And so they're good. People who pay a lot for your advice will actually use it, because it costs them. And they will implement it, and they will put more effort into it, and they actually get better results. But anyhow, how do we apply this to the kingdom? Invest your time in the people who want to grow. Invest your time in the people who want to change. Invest your time in the people who actually want to pursue the will of God. I'm not saying you can't love everybody else. I'm not saying you can't help everybody else. But what I am saying is, pour your time and your effort into the ones who want it. Now let's see. We're going to close this up pretty soon. We're getting close to 2 hours here. And I think we're going to... Now we're probably going to close on that note. And in our next lesson, we're going to be dealing with how to detect deception. So now that we're accepting the truth of who we are and where we are and all that other stuff, and we're learning to trust the truth, we're going to talk about how to spot a liar and how to deal with deception. Meanwhile, God bless you and God keep you. Brother Sam signing out.